I fell through the ground, but it's okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm still alive. Yeah, welcome everybody to Senate House, London, room 246. Hello there as well. Yeah, we have another another room packed with master students and PhDs, all eager to learn and devour intellectual food that is our weekly bread. But yeah, not offered by some kind of divine entity or so, but by our fellow mortal postgrads sitting next to me. And this week we are very delighted to have Jorwan Gama, all the way from Brazil, to bring that weekly bread to us. Well, actually, that's not true. He is from Brazil, did his bachelor and master's at Rio de Janeiro, but has been for a couple of months now, since August, at Newcastle as a visiting PhD. Yeah. And he's gonna tell us all about Roman imperialism in Brazilian high school books. So let's go to the PowerPoint so we can all see what's going on. Right. Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming. I was awarded by CAPES Brazil to spend six months in the UK at Newcastle University. That's it. And I appreciate for the questions at the end of this presentation. Ancient Rome has been a topic in Brazilian high schools since the 19th century, with a strong emphasis on the theme of imperialism that remains until today. One can ask what image of imperialism has been disseminated in school books. I will discuss the construction of that image and the teaching of ancient Roman history in Brazil based on government authorized school books, particularly in two axes, the bibliographies presented by them and the tables of contents. Based on this data, I will argue that this image of Roman imperialism promotes a kind of teaching that does not stimulate the construction of critical knowledge, as well as marginalize the existence of others than the Roman inside the empire. Firstly, though, an explanation regarding the role of school books in Brazilian education is crucial for understanding its potential in our society. So the National School Book Program, called PNLD, is a government initiative that dates back to the 1980s, designed to provide teaching tools to all public schools and students in Brazil. Public schools in Brazil are like the state schools here. They are free of charge, and it represents 85% of our students. Today, this is considered one of the country's most successful social programs, given that it supplies about 30 million children and teenagers, 100,000 schools, and invests more than 1 billion reais per year in Brazilian education. As shown in slide, 1 billion reais is something like 200 million pounds. Besides being responsible for the distribution of books, PNLD coordinates its productions through PNLD Guide, establishing the guidelines that should be followed by school books. In 2017, 13 school books were approved by PNLD. So during the following 3 years, 2018, 2019, and 2020, only these school books could be bought by public schools. Usually, private schools also follow the PNLD and indicate to its students one of the approved school books. The NLD is elaborated based on an extensive set of national laws and ordinances that should be associated with the principles of Brazilian federal constitution. This political legal set should be substantiated in the school books, as shown in slide. They should indicate the following objectives: to reinforce the historical longue durée, to highlight different phases of historical transformation, to understand society as a result of a human action in the political, economic, and social fields, to locate cultural production within its historical context, to reinforce gender, religious, and sexual diversity, to defend the democracy, and to develop students' critical and analytical understanding, at least to create citizens capable of acting in the 21st century. By following these guidelines, the school books come to play a role of discursive tools, disseminating a society and government ideal. In this ideal of society, dissent and diversity are key words. It is important to emphasize 6 functions of Brazilian school books. A teaching tool designed for the school community, a discursive tool that substantiates a legal political framework, are responsible for introducing the students to the basics of historical writing, a holder and disseminator of academic memory, and in this specific case, Roman memories, a bibliographic and cultural source of teachers and students, and a product from the editorial market that has a turnover of millions every year. A number of issues arise. First, it is necessary to question whether the school books allow the students to think critically. Furthermore, as long as it remains a discursive tool, it is necessary to investigate whether it supports the defense of democracy, diversity, and dissent. As for the dissemination of memory, we can ask which memory or memories are disseminated on its page. As for the school books used as reference, one can ask whether they offer a current bibliography aligned with the 21st century scholarly production. Therefore, it is necessary to set the school book within its production context, and accordingly, issues on the teaching of history and ancient history in the 21st century are essential. According to Hall, the primary objective of education in the 21st century is to defend freedom, and in this sense, Greek and Roman literature is an excellent example of the questioning of orders received and authorities established. What's more, it allows students to leave the so-called cultural ghettos formed by studies focused only on local histories, since the study of antiquity promotes the analysis of diversity based on a vision of a distant past. Considering Brazil's past of colonization, the study of Roman imperialism, distant regarding both time and space, ends up sharing certain similarities with our past. Besides that, school books based on premises of historical writing should establish its difference from movies, games, graphic novels, and other elements that transmit a specific vision of Rome and its imperialism. By addressing the teaching of Roman imperialism under the bias of the normative instruments and current concerns about teaching ancient history, some questions arise. Does the content related to Roman imperialism in school books allow our students to question the mechanisms of hegemonic dominations? Is it possible to identify some pattern in the content? Which topic is most studied? Which is least studied? Which absence can we note? Is there the marginalization of certain groups, peoples, or religions? Is there an overvaluing of specific terms, religions, or peoples? Some data will allow us to come up with some answer, at least at an extent. Based on the tables of content, it was possible to observe 2 types of organization, thematic and chronological. Two books have their contents thematically organized, while all the authors have organized it chronologically. What I call thematic organization, however, does not ignore chronology, considering that the books are organized based on the student's year. One of the thematic books, Paths of Man, which divides its content on ancient history into two themes, slavery and citizenship. When I say ancient history, it's more like classical civilization for you here in the UK. We don't have classics. We have classical civilization only in schools. Regarding slavery, the term escravismo was used. In the Portuguese language, the suffix ismo makes a direct reference to a set of ideas or practice that follow a specific standard. As a result, there is a clear indication of a specific and a unique type of slavery for the ancient world, especially for Greece and Rome. It is even possible to note a general crisis of ancient slavery. Concerning citizenship, the book begins with an initial presentation of concepts, discussing modern examples, and then analyze the Greek and Roman realities. However, it remains to be seen whether it also follows the opposite path and seeks to establish questions for modernity based on the ancient context, which would be a mechanism for minimizing anachronisms and the presentism. Concerning books organized chronologically, we can note an initial standard that covers 6 concepts: foundation, monarchy, republic, empire, Christianity, and Roman culture. The book Global History, whose table of contents are presented in the slide, is one example that uses all of these concepts. As you can see, now, the foundation of Rome is the starting point for 10 of the 11 school books chronologically organized. As shown in the slide, the terms used to refer to the foundation of the city include formation 6 times, origins 4 times, foundation 3 times, and origin 1 time. Only one of these books starts with a different discussion on the foundation of the city, which attempts to establish the student's initial contact with Rome based on our present relationship with the past. By denying this approach between the past and present, all the school books indicate a methodology based on distancing, dealing with Roman antiquity as a ready-made past that should be simply be learned by students. If this trend is confirmed in the writing of the content, they would work contrary to what, for example, Bridge and Henderson proposed, since they defended the notion that antiquity is not bound to a past that covers it in dust, always waiting for someone to uncover it, but rather receives new meanings in different contexts. After foundation, the second topic of studies is Roman monarchy, which appears in 3 different ways: monarchy, monarchists, and kings. What should be stressed about this topic, however, is that it is absent in more than 30% of the tables of contents. The third topic is Roman Republic. As shown in the slide, this period is cited 23 times, overrepresented when compared with all previous other topics. The terms found were republic, republican, and aristocratic republic. Identify a recurrence of aspects focused on Roman military victories. The most commonly terms are expansion, plebs, conquest, crisis, patricians, agrarian reform, and soldiers. The repetition of expansion, conquest, and soldiers indicates a republic focused on conquering territories beyond Rome, which would allow it to establish the connection with Roman Empire's formation. In this process, however, there is a remarkable absence in the tables of contents, the word dictatorship. This absence indicates the naturalization of the passage from republic to empire. Furthermore, it would obstruct the establishment of rich debate on the use of the same term for Brazilian history, since the concept of military dictatorship is widely used to refer to the years between 1964 and 1985 in Brazil. Presenting various possibilities of interpreting a concept and its different applications of time characterize critical teaching of history. I would like to emphasize that our elected president, Mr. Jair Bolsonaro, has defended the military dictatorship for his entire political life. The next Minister of Education as well. After the Republican period, all school books organized chronologically converge into the empire, which appears 33 times in the tables of contents. The empire is constantly associated with the following terms: Pax Romana, crisis, and decline. The recurring themes confirm the trend of Roman history based on political and military views. Nevertheless, the absence seen in the studies of the Roman Empire are just as significant as the recurrences. The following terms are not seen: imperialism, Eastern, and revolts. Moreover, there is no mention of peoples different from the Roman one and the language different from Latin, which creates a homogeneous empire without any trace of cultural, religious, or social diversity. Beyond this ethnic and cultural homogeneity, the empire has not suffered with any revolt against it until the so-called barbaric invasions. So, Roman conquests are naturalized and any sign of diversity is hidden from students. It is the opposite of what has been defended by the most recent discussions on the teaching of ancient history, for example. Roman Empire's chapter dedicates considerable space to Christianity, as you can see in the slide. While the term Christianity appears 6 times, the term Christian appears another 5 in a total of 6 books, 4 of which do not mention Roman religion. Only one book presents some indication that a polytheistic society had existed before the Christian Empire. Another recurrent theme on Roman Empire in the school books is a relationship between the crisis of the empire and Christianity. In Book 3, for example, the chapter begins with the empire's decline, goes through the birth of the Christian religion and its evolution into a state religion, to conclude with the ultimate end of the empire and the loss of territorial unity. In Textbook 7, the construction of the empire is immediately followed by the emergence of Christianity and its martyrs, and then by the final crisis. Book 10 follows the same path, revealing how after the birth of Christianity, the empire fights against Christians and then discovers its end with the crisis. In Textbook 11, there is a correlation of force between empire and Christianity. It is possible to see the gradual weakening of the empire, followed by an ascension of Christianity, literally characterized by the word force, and then later by its officialization. It does not matter that political order was dissolving, but rather that a new religious order had taken hold. What makes the situation even more unique is the fact that this new religious order appears in scenarios that simply had ignored Roman and other religions until then. This slide illustrates the space given to Roman beliefs and the use of one image to represent Roman gods. While Roman religions gets 10 lines of attention, only 10 lines. Yeah, only 10 lines. Christianity receives 2.5 pages and includes 3 different and modern images of Jesus. Additionally, Throughout the text, the one word that appears highlighted in different colors is Messiah, and shown in the yellow circle here. The last of the elements seen recurrently in the tables of contents was Roman culture, which is present in only 6 textbooks and is constantly allocated outside political military content. At the end of chapters, always at the end. It has been treated as a curiosity and a less important subject. Based on that, the Roman Empire, as it is presented, is homogeneous and hegemonic, not only because in this account it did not suffer a single revolt, but also because it was able to spread its culture and the religion throughout the Mediterranean. After all, there is no mention of different peoples and religions. Further, it emerged as an empire with the inviolable goal of becoming Christian, considering the disproportionate emphasis given to Christianity and the ancient religions. While the process of Christianization occurred, however, the Roman Empire unrelentingly marched toward its dissolution. The analysis of tables of contents should be followed by a careful investigation of the bibliography provided by the school books, a task to which I will now turn. Yes, Edward Gibbon appears on the list of the 10 most highly cited authors, as shown in the slide. Gibbon is only the most emblematic case in an outdated bibliography regarding Rome's history, created basically between the 30s and the 90s, as you can see here. Of all the referenced books, only 17% were written in the 21st century. The books written between the 20s and the 80s account for 66% of this bibliography. Of the 10 most highly cited, the most recent is from 2001. 2 are from the 90s, and all the others were written before these. Another problem of scholarly production is the mismatch between the bibliographies and the tables of contents. The tables of contents indicate a teaching that emphasizes empire, notably the Augustan age. However, this topic is not seen recurrently in the bibliography. What is more, the most cited book, A History of Private Life, covers topics that are marginalized in school books, such as aspects of daily life and religiosity. The same dynamic can be seen with the second most highly cited book, Passages from Antiquity to Feudalism, which is based on the relationship between imperialism, slavery, and the maintenance of the empire, even though there are practically no mentions of slavery in the tables of contents. By focusing on the Roman Empire and imperialism without basing these themes on a specific bibliography, the school books do not allow for any critical analysis of process by the students. Of the 117 works that form the entire bibliography on Rome, only 10 focus on the Roman Empire and imperialism. Even in these works, the absence of studies that refer to, for example, the post-colonial theory is significant. Although there are productions that currently criticize this theory and its application to Roman studies, it was heavily used in the Brazilian scholarly production of the first decade of the 21st century. In this aspect, the school books seem to have stopped in time at some point between the 60s and the 90s. There is another significant absence in the bibliography: Latin literature. There are no reference to authors like Cicero, Ovid, or Plutarch. This one here is Flavius Josephus. He was quoted in one book. These authors were simply ignored as historical sources, although they were sometimes mentioned inside the chapters. a number of specific issues arise. How are they cited in the text? Are the passages located within the context of production? Are they used as historical source? If the relationship between the tables of contents and bibliographies is misaligned, the situation is even worse when analyzing the relationship between gender and the production of knowledge. In the analysis of the bibliography cited in the school books, I have noticed a major discrepancy between male and female authors. As illustrated in the slide, on the list of 10 most highly cited authors in school books, only one is a woman. Of the 10 most highly cited works in the bibliographies, not one was written by a woman. And of the 117 books about Roman history cited, women wrote only 11. The discrepancies in above is also apparent when analyzing the authors of the school books themselves, as shown in this slide. The total of 28 authors, 16 are men and 12 are women. Okay, when we refine the search, the imbalance gets even greater. 5 school books were written exclusively by men, and only 1 was written exclusively by women. No woman is the sole author of a PNLD school book, while 3 books were written each by only a man. In the only book written exclusively by women, there are 8 books indicated in the bibliography that cover Roman history, but only 1 of which was written by women. This imbalance can partially explain the fact that there is no topic on women in Rome in the tables of contents. The discussions on the role of women in Rome could help fuel discussions on the role of women in current Brazilian society. In the sense, the school book would uncover the current conflict, the issue of gender. In a country like Brazil, which is 5th worldwide in the ranking of femicides, and with a long history of patriarchal tradition, such a discussion would be highly relevant, and even more for a student public mostly formed by women. According to the most recent data provided by the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, the percentage of adult women with university degrees is higher than that of men. Furthermore, women attend school more than men, despite being both plagued by the riot rates of abandonment that transform Brazilian high school into the doubting bottleneck of our educational system. Despite all of this, women still only represent 10% of the seats in the House of Representatives, and just 37% of management positions at companies. The young female Brazilian student does not see herself represented in the analyzed school books, nor can she identify her gender as occupying positions of power. A striking exception may be found in the only textbook written exclusively by women. It mentions the film Alexandria, which tells the story of the Egyptian philosopher and mathematician Hypatia. She represents precisely the image of a female leadership in society and in the construction of knowledge that's not seen in the bibliographies and tables of contents of the same book that quoted the movie. Fortunately, over the recent years, this relationship between power, knowledge, and forms of female silencing has been debated. Simply ignored by the bibliographies of school books in Brazil, Mary Beard, for example, has taken stance in interviews and books that seek to identify and impede such forms of female silencing. In this country, here, the Women Classics Committee is also a highly significant initiative since it proposed to support women in classics, promoting feminist perspectives that seek equality and diversity in antiquity. I'd like to share with you the first image and the chapter of Roman history. That's the first page of this chapter. The question is, there is no emperor here because the legend, the subtitle, there is nothing telling the students that this is the emperor and this is her sister, right? There are here is a man and she is a woman. Here is Joaquin Phoenix and she is Connie Nielsen. That's the symbol. He's just a man silencing a woman in the very first page of this book. What about the questions here? There is nothing related with the power in this image. They are trying to say, is this something like the man is nowadays? There are violent men like this one in our society today. But there is no link between the Roman antiquity and this image in this page. They are trying to use one ancient subject to reinforce something of our present. That's a kind of use of the past. Or Simon Goldhill's way of doing classical reception, when they are using a classical image to reinforce something of our present. To conclude, it is perceived that there are complex legal political apparatus and a consolidated scholarly basis that should guarantee that school books can indeed be instruments of transforming students into critical thinking citizens. But by our data on school books, one can see that these books go precisely in the opposite way and ignore the main scholarly trends of the last 30 years. Therefore, because it is a work in progress, I'm sharing specific questions that will lead my future research. Would it be possible to establish critical teaching about ancient Rome based on the available bibliography? With the chapter structure presented, is it possible to discuss Roman history beyond its political-military angle? Which sources support the conclusions made by the school books? Who is interested in the teaching of such a homogeneous Roman Empire in Brazil? That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jorwan, for a very, very interesting talk. We're now first going to say bye to the people over here.
Bye.
Bye.